the cap table. Now, if you have determined the stock price and you also determined the valuation of your company, you know how much money the VC will put in, you can build a cap table, which reflects basically money and percentage of the different shareholders. And now I'd like to show you how you can do that. Well, first of all, the cap table is important to bring employees, founders, employees who might have stock options, founders with common stock, and investors into one table. And this one table basically reflects who owns what. How do you do that? Well, start with the very basic situation. And the basic situation is before the investment, when you start your company. And when you start your company, you own all the shares. That means, look at yourself, founders, 2 million shares, 100%. And this is, by the way, all the shares. Total is also 2 million, 100%. Now, it comes to the VC round. And the VC wants to invest $2 million. It's by the way, the same. It's just a coincidence. It's 2 million shares and $2 million invest. So it's not necessarily the same number. The VC wants to invest 2 million at the valuation of 8 million. Very important. Post money, not pre-money. Post money means 8 million total. Of that, it's 2 million for the VC equals 25%. That is 8 million post-money valuation. Now what you have to determine, the next step is how many shares you have to issue in that financing round, which reflects the additional 25% the VC gets. This is basically what the cap table has to tell you. So you start with the 2 million shares you have by yourself, which are at the very beginning the 100%. Now what you do is, and this is your first step, you calculate your share after the investment, which is easy going because, as we said before, 8 million post-money valuation, 2 million VC, 25% VC, you remain with 75%. So your share at the end of the investment, after the investment, is 75%. VC's money is 25%, total again 100%. Now the second question is, how many shares do you have to issue that reflect the 25%? What you can basically do is you calculate if the 75% has to equal 2 million shares, what is the equivalent of 100%? And in that case, it's 2,666,000 and so on shares. And this is the calculation you do in order to determine the total number of shares. And then it's really easy to calculate the number of shares the VC gets, because this is the difference between the 2.6 million and the 2 million you have. So the VC gets 600,000, 600 and so on shares, and that exactly equals his 25% he gets in your company. And this is the first step in order to build the cap table. Now you know the number of shares which have to be issued. Next step is you have to calculate the share price, the preferred price in that cap table here. How do you calculate the share price? You divide the total valuation, which is 8 million, by the number of shares in order to determine the exact share price. If you do that, 8 million divided by 2.6, you end with $3 share price. And you can also do it in a cross-check. You can also try to look at that from pre-money valuation standpoint. You will end with the same number, which is again basically 8 million divided by 2.6, $3 share price, stock price, preferred price. And this is the way you build your cap table. Now everyone knows the number of shares he gets. Everyone knows the money he has to pay. Well, not really from the cap table, because this Agile for the VC is built in between. And everybody knows the percentage he owns from the entire company. This is how you build your cap table. And in practice, it is a lot more complicated, because normally it's not only one founder, it's a number of founders, and maybe there are stock option programs already involved, and there's an angel investor, and so on and so on. But the rationale of calculations is always the same. So you have to agree on a valuation, and if you agree on the valuation and you know how much money the new investor wants to put in, you can start doing all the calculations by looking at the existing number of shares, calculating the additional number of shares, and putting all the results into the cap table.